Welcome to Epochal Growth, a growth support podcast. I'm Sarah Caminiti, and this is our first episode. I am so excited to share this with you. I hit the jackpot with podcast guests, and Sarah Betts, the Director of Support at Sendoso, was kind enough to spend time with me discussing her career journey, how she leads her team, the way she uses data to drive change, and at the core of it all, we talked a lot about what it means to be a maker. I won't give any more away. Thank you so much for joining us here at Epochal Growth, and I hope you enjoy.
So I am Sarah Betts. I am the Director of Alyce Support for Alyce by Sendoso. We are a revenue generation platform. We help people connect that relationship in a deal or a customer renewal by personalized gifts at scale. Right gift, right time, right person. And I live in Oregon, in Salem. It's rainy. I love it here. It's so green. And I live with my husband and my 3 kids, and occasionally his older 3 kids. And Kita the dog. She's sort of the famous one in the family.
The most vocal, I'm sure, at the best times.
Oh, yes, absolutely. She's snoozing on the couch now, so not working at my computer right now. We are in so many platforms, and I feel like my last company, we had really narrowed it down to be super, super efficient. And then I come here and I'm like, wait, okay, how many project management softwares do we have? And how many possibilities for recording things? And oh my goodness.
Oh, that's so overwhelming. And this is a new job. I looked, you just started in February. Congratulations.
Yeah, so I was working for Alyce, and we walked into an all hands on Wednesday, January 31st, and they said, "You no longer exist. You work for Sendoso now."
Oh.
Yep.
What?
It was an acquisition. So
no, but they hadn't been talked about it at all?
No. It was a complete surprise. I mean, I knew we were doing something. I knew it was coming soon, but I didn't know if it was like the end of the quarter. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. So we went from a company of about 50 people to 150 being absorbed into our competitor.
Oh my gosh.
And yeah, so now I get to figure out how to migrate customers from our platform to Sendoso. And yeah.
Okay. Wow. With so much, time to strategize and
Exactly. Yeah. I managed it really well for a couple of days, but then about 2 days in, because I'm leading my team and making sure everybody's okay, and everybody has what they need. And then by that night, I just closed my laptop and went to my bed and just sobbed, ugly cried for a couple hours. And I was like, okay, back to it.
Yeah, that has to happen though sometimes, because especially in the customer space, it is it's way too often that you've got everything piled on, no communication, no clear set expectations really, other than you have to do this and exceed all expectations, but we won't necessarily tell you what those are, how to do it, nor will we give you a budget to do it the right way. But cool. Good.
Yeah. I am down to a team of 2 support agents.
Shut up.
That's all I have.
What?
Yeah.
You triple in size and you only have 2 people?
Well, Sendoso has a support team. Fantastic support team.
Okay.
And so actually part of my job, as I figure out the migration, which is a whole bunch of feature parity mapping and who needs this and who needs that, and timing of everything, which is fun because I get to know the product team really well. They do their own in-house fulfillment, so I've gotten to know their fulfillment people. Lovely, lovely humans all around. That makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
But they have a brilliant director of support, Jeff Deist. He's a fantastic guy. They have a great support team. I fully trust moving my team over to him when that time comes. But then I get to figure out what I want to do.
Wait, so is the transition planned for you to transition away?
So I will no longer be leading the support team, which is okay. I still will be customer focused. It just hasn't quite been defined what that exactly looks like yet.
But it'll work out. You're not getting laid off.
No.
Okay.
We still at Sendoso. It's very flattering. I've had several chats with people. They're like, how do we keep you? What do you want to do?
Oh, that is awesome. Congratulations.
It's really awesome. But yeah, now I feel like I'm having that post-college thought of like, oh my gosh, what do I want to be when I grow up? What do I want to do?
Yeah, I bet that's so overwhelming because not like you have like 2 buckets you've got to choose from. Like,
Yeah, it's like create it.
oh, pretty cool,
It is really cool.
but overwhelming. And
Yeah.
I'm sure just daunting and all of the words that fall into that category. What are you thinking?
So far I've gotten to the point of making out a list of things that I want out of my career and things that I don't want, which I think is really important. Sort of that closely held values thing. And then, just evaluating things from there. And it's been really helpful because I've had those thoughts of like, well, I could do this and I should. Wait, should why? Is that a me should or is that a somebody else should?
For you. Good for you. It's so empowering when you allow yourself to ask why over and over again and figure out what is the root of you feeling the need to go in a certain direction. So that's awesome that you're giving yourself that space because that's a hard one. I feel like as women, it's probably in general, but still it feels like it's a lot of a woman thing to give ourselves.
Sure. How often do we get to decide what we do?
Yeah. And like not have to think about the ripple effect of it all for every other human that we've ever interacted with in our life.
I mean, there is that. Obviously, whatever I choose does need to pay the mortgage and food for 3 teenagers. Just a little thing. But, I get to do those things. Like, would this decision allow me time with my family in the way that I want to spend that time? Because my kids are getting older. My baby turns 15 at the end of this month. And like that recognition of how fast this goes. Like I have a 19-year-old and already I'm just like, wait a second, you were a baby and you were such a cute little toddler and now you are this 6'3" man with this deep voice and
it's wild. Lots of transitions.
So many.
The ones you've got going on are pretty big.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel immensely privileged for it. I feel like I'm like slowing down to capture this because there's like this feeling of like, who gets this kind of privilege? And that feeling of I want to honor this.
Like it's who gets this kind of privilege, but also, holy cow, you have worked so hard to be in a position where they are saying, nope, we're not taking this chance.
Yeah.
Write it down. We'll see what we can do. Like that is or a woman, especially without some sort of familial or sorority, fraternity tie to the whole nepo of it all. But like, dang woman, that is a badge you should be like waving as high as possible. That is like, congratulations. Wow, that is so much.
Thank you. It's because of all the people who came before me and helped me out.
Yeah.
Like I have been helped by so many people and I hope that I can give that back to others.
I'm sure you already are. And being able to acknowledge it is the thing that makes all of the difference in the world. If you're saying that this was all just your doing,
no, definitely.
This being a very stereotypical business person. Instead, it's no, I'm going to take this opportunity to approach this in a way that will make positive change and have the ripple effect. That's a good ripple effect and people will feel it. And that's awesome.
Yeah. I love that there are more people in support who've made a career of support and are moving throughout the org or creating their own companies and be like, no, the customer is why we have the business. Like we didn't build this thing just for fun. Like we built it for a customer to use. So seeing those people ripple throughout orgs and throughout industries, it's exciting. Like I've been in this career for about 12 years now.
Yeah. Yeah. What did you do before?
I was a stay-at-home mom. And before that, I was a preschool teacher.
Oh my goodness. Holy cow. What a climb from, but it's so similar too. I've realized that as I'm reading parenting books, like leadership, support, parenting, all is in this umbrella of how do you understand people and how do you ask them questions?
Yeah.
What did you take away them? Like, what was it that made you want to transition away from childcare and incredible responsibility?
I was going through a divorce and it was like, I need a job. Another one of those fortunate things, I had a friend who was the support manager for a cultured food company. And she was like, you are so good at this. Like, you know how to do all of this stuff. Come work for me. And I did. And I started, I worked my way up and I was like leading the team and I was writing all the content. And yeah, then that company was sold and I was absolutely so fortunate. I landed a job at the best possible place for me, which was Olark Live Chat. And it's a bootstrapped live chat company, one of the original chat companies.
Yeah, I remember them.
Such a strong culture of support and customer centricity, and try something. That experimentation of like each quarter, people could choose a project. Just be like, I'm going to work on this, and I think this is what's going to happen. And like we had to use the scientific method to get approval to do it. But it taught me a lot about nothing is permanent.
Yep.
Well, very few things are permanent. There are some things that are permanent. But that idea of try it, make a hypothesis, give it a try, and then at the end of the quarter, take a look and say what worked, what didn't, what can I improve, what do I want to toss, talk to other people at the org and see what was working for them. And like, maybe there's two things that can combine together and really make a difference. And that's how we landed on that focus on mental health for support agents and into accessibility. And now Olark is one of the leaders in technology accessibility, both for the end user, because universities use them. And if you have a university website, by federal law, you have to be ADA accessible. And for the employees, like they're going after that now. Like, how can we allow more people into the workplace in technology that's not going away? Because we have the tools. Like, we have screen readers, we have interpreters, we have translations. There's all of these things that we can use to allow more people to access full-time work.
Wow. And all of that came from allowing a safe space for people to talk and try and and fail and see what happens after and how you can grow from it.
Yes. To have leaders who say, I expect you to fail. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. Was very empowering.
I bet. And to have that be your foundational space for your career, I can only imagine how transformative that was.
Yeah, absolutely. But, that does relate back to the maker. Like, that informed my sewing practice, because obviously for a long time I didn't really have a lot of time to sew. It's very hard to sew when you're working full time and you're responsible entirely for small people. But when we bought this house about 5.5 years ago, my husband was like, you will have a sewing space in this house. This is a non-negotiable. And so we converted a closet. It's very tiny, like 5 feet square, but I went and got the IKEA shelves and set it up. It works for me. And I've been able to really embrace trying things. And like, I go to Goodwill and I buy old sheets. Sometimes they turn into actual wearable garments. I have this thing for those vintage floral sheets. I love them. They're impossible to find anymore. But back when it was possible, I bought them every time I came across them. But also plain sheets, JCPenney polyester things that are totally uncomfortable on the bed are great for trying things. Like, let me see if this works and what I can do with it. And yeah, so that make mistakes, try things, make small changes to have a big impact, all just like across my life, back and forth. It's all related.
It definitely is. No, it is. That's a really good point, because being able to connect that in your space outside of work creates more of a holistic, like, grounding in it. And it's not scary, even if you've got someone that says you're allowed to fail. if you're not allowing yourself to fail,
That took some time.
I think that's a work forever sort of thing. But if you're at least allowing yourself a space to consider it and see what happens when you do it, then it just becomes a part of you instead of something that someone else is telling you that you have permission to do.
And I think it's really powerful to teach yourself that in multiple contexts.
Yes.
Brains are very elastic, but if we keep them on one track for very long, it's, there's ruts that get built. So yeah, being able to try things out in my sewing room, try things out in my kitchen, try things out in my garden, try things out at work with my team, with my strategy, all of those things helps build that muscle of trying, which is truly a maker mindset.
It is. No, it is. It's I hadn't really thought about that in that way, but it's so true. But it's those things, it's what do you allow yourself to obsess over, and how does that impact the final result when you actually get through it? And it's something that I've been reflecting on a lot with quilting, because I stress so much about the cutting and the precision and making everything perfect for that beginning stage. But then as time goes on and I recognize, okay, do I really want to make this point perfect? But then the end result, no one will ever see that point not being there. And honestly, the not having the point makes the quilt better.
And thinking of that, one of the things that I love is that I have a quilt that my great-grandmother made. So she died in 1950s. So this would have been early 1900s. And she was like in her 90s when she died. And so this is a very old quilt. It's one of the original red works. It's completely hand sewn. There is not a single machine stitch, and it's a drunkard's path. So,
whoa,
I'll have to take a picture of it and share it with you. It's gorgeous. It is imperfect.
Yep.
There's, different, some things are a little bit crooked and some of the corners are a little bit off. But if I hang it on a wall and I look at it, it's gorgeous. And it has that crinkled, old, worn, there's pieces that are faded. And I still, if I'm having just a rough time, I just spread that blanket on my bed. It's probably worth a fortune. It's, a full, finished, drunkard's path, red work quilt. I don't even want to think about the cost of it because, my grandma made it.
Yeah. She
sewed it by hand. My grandmother used it. My mom used it.
Oh my gosh.
Special in that way.
Special thing. And the intention behind the time that was put into the creation of this quilt just puts that love in every corner of it.
It also makes me laugh because every time I get to a point in sewing room, I should really hand baste or hand sew this. I'm like, yeah, I know it will turn out better if I baste it. And then I look at that and I'm like, you literally sewed an entire quilt, these tiny little pieces by hand.
Yes, that's something I do not ever see myself doing, for especially the piecing of it all. And for a pattern like that, I mean, piecing with a sewing machine is incredibly time consuming. Yes, I go through the same mental talk at the end of every quilt when I'm so over it, and you just want to just plow through it all and just
see it done
of the way. And it's like, okay, but if I do hand sew the binding, then it will look so much better, or I can get it done in 15 minutes and just call it a day. And depends on the day of which one wins.
And it depends on what you're doing and what the goal is. Things in support are that way too. I think sometimes we obsess so much over getting a dashboard perfect, or finding the perfect metric, or getting the perfect replies or workflow. And sometimes good enough is good enough.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's what is the end result and the impact that end result has. And if those small details that you are just spending hours debating have an impact, they'll show themselves later on if it's not right. That is the way to give the customers not only what they need, what they want, But if you're communicating with them that we're listening to you, we heard this, and that is why we started having this conversation. We think this is going to achieve it, but tell us if there's something that we missed or misinterpreted. That's when you get to have that real progress.
Yes. And I'm lucky because I can trust my team to fill those gaps. I can have a good workflow and they can say, I needed to do this, so I did this thing because the customer had this goal, and they know that whatever the process is, whatever, the normal thing is that we do, the end goal is to get the customer back to their work. Like, that's why we make the software, is they ultimately have a metric they need to present to their board, and we need to get them there. So yeah, having a team who understands why our customers use the platform is probably the most important workflow I have spent any time on.
Oh, that is so valuable. And also in doing that, you've created a space where they feel confident and secure enough to say it out loud and know that it's not going to be ignored, or there's not going to be finger pointing. It's just okay, well, let's talk about it. And then you can figure it out together with some transparency behind it. And the customer feels it. Every single time you have those internal conversations, the customer feels it.
Yeah, I had the best compliment on Monday. I was finishing up a customer call, and he said, the reason that my team approved this purchase was because we have felt listened to and respected by every member of your team. Oh, and I was like,
wow.
Okay, I want to put that on a plaque, and I just need to put that everywhere.
Yes, that is the best compliment you can ever hope for when you're building a support team.
Done. Okay, we did it.
Wow, congratulations.
Obviously, we have to keep going.
Yes, but you've got a good benchmark now. You're good. Dang, that's awesome. And to think that someone said that out loud, think about the number of people that feel that exact same thing and
absolutely
don't say anything.
Yes, we talk so much in support about, if you get one complaint on this feature, you can expect about X number of people have also experienced this pain point. That's a great reminder to remember that when you get a compliment, there are also a lot of people who had the thought and didn't say it.
It's a hard thing to remember either direction in support of what that one ticket actually represents.
Yes. And I think that's something that a lot of people outside of support don't understand, and why it's so important for us to keep that story of support and the customer in mind, and remember to convey that to others. Because we're one of the most heavy metrics departments. And so people what's your CSAT score? What's your first response time? And what's your time to resolution? And sometimes we just need to say, these are metrics that tell a story, and we don't have a metric for everything. I was just lamenting after I talked to Neil and all of that, but that we don't have metrics to measure empathy or to measure trust or teamwork. And those are the things I wish I could measure.
Yes, so much. I'm so glad that you said that. Metrics is on the brain all the time, because the metrics that exist for support are the least valuable, really.
So transactional. And as humans, yes, it is a transaction. Sometimes it's just, where do I find X, or I need to pay my bill, or I need to reset my password, or how do I move this user around, or whatever. But sometimes it truly is, I'm frustrated and I need to do a thing and I don't know how to do the thing. And when we're stressed, we can't process information because our hind brain is engaged. This is the best thing that I've taken from education to support, is that brain function. When we feel threatened and our brain goes to, I am going to die, as a first response to any stress, whether that's a tiger's coming at me, or I fear rejection by my boss, and that would be, it would kick me out of the community where I will die, which is how humans started out. And to remember that sometimes we need to reassure and empathize and make that connection. I hear you. And I will do my best to prevent the worst outcome from happening. Helps people go, okay, actually, I just really need a report. Okay, let's get to your report.
Yes, it's giving the pause. You've got to pause. And so many of these metrics prevent teams from pausing, which increases the panic for the customer. It increases the panic for the team. And then you can never get to where you need to go to find out that they just need a report and they're panicking because their meeting's in an hour and they need to produce this because you're just sending out things as fast as you can because you have to hit this metric.
Yes.
What are the most effective ways that you've been able to share the customer story with folks outside of support in your companies?
That's a really good question. I am a very heavy data collector and user. I think you've seen my thing, ABCD, always be collecting data. I may not need it now, but I may need it later, and I will be very grateful that it's there when the later happens. I unfortunately have gotten away from doing this because it's just been chaos the last couple of months. But I learned from, I think it was Daria Axelrod. She was one of our VP of products. And she talked about how when we're in product or support or something, all we hear is the bad. This is broken. This is a bug. The product doesn't work the way I want it to. I need this feature. And she said it's so easy to get down into that bad and that negative and all the things that are wrong. So she started doing something that she called Good Stuff Friday, where she would take all of the good things from the week and wrap them up in that post. And several people were like, I want to do that too. So I started doing a Good Stuff Friday, and I would talk about something that we had done in support or tried in support, and I would pull the metrics in. You know, this was our shift in metrics or our change, but there was always a customer story in there or some way that we were interacting with customers or other teams. And I think that was the thing that most, first of all, centered support as something to pay attention to, because we're often in our own little queue, in our own little channel, doing our own little thing, and we don't pull that into the greater company as much. And sometimes people aren't asking for it. You have to go give it and make it an expected thing that they start looking for. So that was one impact of that. But the other was just making those metrics tie into the humans that they were involved with. So one of the things that I did was I separated out our CSAT scores. So we had customer CSAT and we had recipient CSAT. We're a corporate gifting company. We help people send gifts to prospects, customers, that kind of thing. And what I made very clear was that our recipient CSAT was low by design. And low as in like 95%, so very high. But I call that our Kevlar vest because my goal is for my customers to be successful. They need to look good in front of their prospects. If something goes wrong, we take that. The gift card, had already been redeemed because Amazon gift card fraud is a constant thing we deal with, or the package arrived broken, or the wrong thing arrived. Mm-hmm. That was our fault, entirely us. So we take that on. They can be mad at us, and the customer closes the deal. Because at the end of the day, that's the important thing. And so that helps me to tell that story of why that metric might be low. It's on purpose.
Yep. Wow. That was a great strategy to really think about the impact of the customer. What is the service you are trying to provide for them? And what is the goal that they need to achieve when using your product? And I think that that's something that is very easy to forget because the end result is why they signed up, or it's why they pay their annual fees or whatever it is. If you don't think about that in the entire process of your communications with them, you miss out on a lot. And that's awesome that you've been able to connect those dots in a way that's so impactful and so felt by the customer.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, they're our customers. Like, to keep them around, they need to get that report at the end of the week without stress.
So, yeah, definitely. And how do your agents feel when you're releasing the information to the rest of the company that's sharing all the good news, do they share with you things that they want to have on there? So it's a team effort.
Yeah, so our team meetings are on Wednesday, and at the end of like, we start every meeting with kudos. Love that part. So it's the feel good thing. And then we get into the metrics and like what's coming next and what's happening with our bugs, that kind of thing. But at the end, it's anything else. I just have this big screen that says anything else, has a little hummingbird on it. And yeah, like they know that is their time to bring up anything and everything. And they'll bring up like, hey, this was really awesome, or this isn't going well. Can we do something about this? But yeah, it's taken me a while, especially because I started with an international team. And when people come from call centers, especially, and we see that a lot in support, they are so tied to those metrics.
Yes.
Everything about it. And the first time one of my employees got a bad CSAT score, she came to me in tears.
Oh,
because she was like, I love my job and please don't fire me. And I was like, excuse me?
Oh my goodness.
It's like, I would never, ever fire you for a bad CSAT. I was like, unless you told the customer to go F themselves, and then we would have a more serious talk. But no, absolutely not. Like, I would never fire you for that. And so it took a long time to teach them, I don't care if a ticket doesn't get resolved in 15 minutes. If it's taking days and you're just ignoring your queue, that's a problem, but you're working on it. Sometimes things are delayed by other departments. And so now we have a metric that it required help from another department. And so if a ticket is waiting on operations or engineering or product or something, that does not get rolled into our resolution times because that's not our resolution time. I do report on it because I want the company to know you are impacting how the customer gets through their day. But as far as whether or not somebody is meeting their performance goals because they're waiting on a ticket from product, absolutely not.
That's wonderful. I'm sure that they just like that breath of like, holy cow, I am able to be looked at as a person.
Yes, absolutely, because they are human beings. It's very cute. They call me Basita, or the queen ant, and they call themselves the ant farm. It's adorable, and I love it.
Shirt and says that.
I know, I should get a little Basita shirt with a little ant on it. But it makes me feel good that they know they can come to work and be fully themselves and not extra stressed out. Work is stressful enough, just the whole, like, I have to be here for 8 hours thing. It took a long time to establish that, but what it's done is that I know that when the shit hits the proverbial fan, my team is there. They are all in, sleeves rolled up, getting stuff done. Through this acquisition, I have not had to doubt for a moment that the customers would be taken care of. No matter how crazy things get, they're like, let's figure it out. Let's just get it done. Like, we don't have all the resources that we need, but we'll find a way. And they also know to look for the most effective way to getting the customer what they need. Whether that's I sit down and I go through this spreadsheet line by line and fix stuff for them. Cool. Make it happen.
Yep. Yeah, that is one of the most valuable things that you can do as a leader, to be able to sit back and know that you created a foundation, you continue to build upon the foundation, and it's rooted in communication, transparency, thoughtfulness, because if they're part of the journey, if they're part of the story, then they understand the intent behind what you're asking them to do, why the policy is what it is, what the process is. If something gets denied that you want to do, they know, okay, well, this is why, and these are the steps that we either need to take to pivot or to try again in a little while. And I wish that I've been noticing this is something that a lot of support leaders are allowing themselves to really create in their space. And it's not as common outside of support because we understand communication so well.
Oh, that's so true. I hadn't really thought about that. I was like, yeah, other teams are just more like heads down. They're not as social, but the support team is like, what do you need? How do I get this done?
Yeah, we see what happens when you ask why. We see that when you first send that message into support and you're saying, that everything's broken and nothing is happening the way that it's supposed to happen. And then come to find out that they logged in with an account that they opened, 6 months ago. Then it's just the email address was slightly different. That's why everything's gone. And really, it's just chill out. You're fine.
Yeah.
It's that has that impact that everyone in the company can feel.
Mm-hmm. Now, the downside to that, there is a flip side. There's the dark side of this thing, is that oftentimes I have to remind my team, you don't have to do everything manually. Flag things, please. Like, we're so good at finding workarounds that sometimes we forget not everything has to be a workaround. We can expect things to work well, and we can fight for that.
Yeah, and it's such a great thing to bring up, because you're right. In this industry, in this department, figuring out how to be scrappy and think outside the box is just a default.
Mm-hmm.
And feeling okay to say, actually, can we talk about this?
Why are we doing it this way? Yes. Why are we okay with, admin dashboards that are just...
So why am I spending 7 hours doing this one thing that actually could probably take 15 minutes if I had the right resources? Putting that value of time into support is something I think is a newer thing. At least I've been seeing it talked about in a way that I hadn't before. Have you been noticing that as well? And have you been connecting that within your team?
Yeah, when I first started in management here, one of the things I started doing was I have a ticket field that's admin only. So what are things that we had to do for a customer or that we had to do manually that wasn't available in the software? And I track that. So then I can say, based on, ticket handle time and all of this, I am spending this much money in support doing this thing manually, or doing this thing for customers that they should be able to do themselves. Split those out. And so then I have gotten a lot of features shipped to our admin dashboard. Part of it is having a good relationship with engineering. Always make friends with the engineers, first thing. But the other thing is being able to tie those numbers. Not having this is costing us X thousands of dollars a year. And then leadership goes, I don't want to be throwing $5,000 away. Let's fix that.
That's great. That's great that you have a team too, like a leadership team within the company that will take the time to talk about it.
Yeah. It's you just push it on them. Just talk.
You just make yourself present at all times, and
Exactly.
And then
I think we've taken on that support is the other department. And I'm seeing that shift in support, is that support leaders are no longer content to just manage the email, chat, phone queue. We are speaking up more, and we are expecting a seat at the senior leadership table. Because for one thing, we have a wealth of data about customers and the product. But for another thing, we are a cost center, and just accepting that we're a cost center is ridiculous. Like, we can change that.
Yes. We can also too embrace that this is part of the service that the customers are paying for, and that's a good thing. Absolutely. And so we need to be set up to be the value that they need us to be. And value comes in so many different spaces outside of revenue, because often I've been seeing talk about how, yes, support is the cost center, but the way to change that is to get them to start upselling, get them to start doing all of these things. And that's not the job of support.
No. That is a conflict of interest, in my opinion.
Yes.
If somebody needs help and you're blocking them by saying, oh, you need to upgrade, that creates a miserable experience. And that person is not going to renew. They're not going to recommend your service. But if I can look at it and say, these are the ways support is costing money, and here's how I can make it more efficient, that is valuable.
Very much so.
Or I can say, people in onboarding struggle with this feature, and when they do, they are X% more likely to churn. That is, I can take that to the product team and be like, this is a cause of churn right here.
Yes.
and it causes this much churn.
Yes, completely. And I love that you said that support leadership needs to be at the table, because it's something that I don't think we've allowed ourselves to say for a while, because we were finally getting invited to conversations and we didn't want to mess it up. But now that people are solid in their careers, there is a whole industry around customer support professionals, rather than having it
You
just,
even have conferences.
we have so many conferences.
Yes.
It's a new world, and being loud about power that support has, the impact that support has, and the intelligence that lives within talented support professionals is the steps that need to take place these days.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm so glad that you're finding so much success doing that where you are amidst the chaos, and have been able to continue to drive that without just losing what made your support so special. And then that will be reflected with the company that you've joined as well, because it'll all just marry together.
Absolutely. Customer love goes anywhere.
It really does. And the voice that we have, we're their advocate at the end of the day. We are the ones talking to them. We are the ones that are supporting them.
I can't remember who said it, but somebody told me that support is the team that is wearing the customer's conference swag at the table. Like, we're the ones that show up just like, yay, customer, they're awesome.
Yes, and ask, wait, why? Why don't you want to do this? Because this really would help the customer. Believe me, it would help the customer.
Yes.
And it opens up the conversation in a very cool way when you start asking those questions.
And it opens other questions.
A lot of other questions. Yeah. Why do we choose to do things the way that we do? Why do we choose to spend time on these specific areas? Where are these decisions coming from? Yeah, I mean, we could have another 6-hour conversation, I think, about all of this. But it all does come back to being a maker at the end, because you don't allow yourself to have these conversations, if you don't allow yourself to think about things this way and approach things in a creative way.
A creative way.
And ask the questions to the customer in a creative way. Because that is how you get them to tell you about that report. And so it allows you space to just figure it out unconventionally, and then document it and track it.
And then document it, yes. Always the tagline of support.
Please just document this, please.
Can you write that down?
Yes. Where can I find this after? So this has been probably one of the best almost hours. I'm so glad that I got to meet you, and I'm so sad that the time is starting to come to a close.
Oh, this has been a delight. Thank you.
Thank you. And before we close, I do want to ask the final interview.
Oh, yeah.
And this isn't a Taylor Swift reference, I promise, even though I am a bit of a Swiftie myself. But determining what area you're in and embracing change and transformation, I think, is something that can really drive you and allow you also a chance to think that this is not forever, and take advantage of it. And so before we hopped on this call, I asked you to think about either what era are you currently in, or what era do you see yourself moving into? And I would love to hear your answer.
I think that I am in an era of refinement. I think I've had, I'm 47 years old, but I know people who say, wait, you're that old. I have had, as a friend says, many lives. And I have learned so much from those experiences. And I think I'm at a point where I'm old enough to see patterns. I'm old enough to have that ability to say, no, thank you, or yes, please, more of that. And so taking all of that and mixing it together and creating what I want my life to look like going forward is, like we talked about at the beginning, is like I'm seeing it everywhere in my life. So I think very much an era of refinement is where I'm at.
What a cool era to be in, and
Yes.
and empowering too. Just
Mhm.
own it. Know that your time is valuable and intentional, and you're able to see all of just the opportunities available to you and decide if you want to do it or not. And so well deserved. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me, Sarah.
Thank you so much for listening to our first episode of Epochal Growth. We look forward to seeing you next time, and make sure that you subscribe so that you don't miss an episode.